Do you want me to call roll?
Yep, please.
Commissioner Barrows,
Yes.
Commissioner Franzine,
Here.
Commissioner Lepke,
Here.
Commissioner Coring,
Here.
and, whoops, hold on, let me get to the right screen. Here he is. And Commissioner Hoag is absent.
Okay, Kara Terry.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kara Terry with Community Services, and
Talia Broadhead with Blade.
so we are here today to share information about the grant application process and the coalition's findings. But before we start there, I want to back it up a little bit just to give a little history on Blade. So Blade, or the Brainerd Lakes Area Drug Education, came about in 2019 when law enforcement was looking at their arrests and the population in the jail that focused mainly around substance use disorder. And Community Services was looking at our out-of-home placement numbers, and the majority of those kids were placed because of substance use disorder of the parents. So we were talking about what we were doing and how what we were doing wasn't working. The sheriff's office had said they couldn't arrest their way out of the problem, so what do? So we formed this coalition of Blade around all of our community members. That includes the sheriff's office, Community Services, county attorney's office, our local law enforcement agencies, area schools, the faith community, people with lived experience, Crow Wing County community members, community providers, the media. We have some organizations and businesses, and a host of other folks that have joined since we became the Opioid Coalition. So in June of last year, we tied in our opioid settlement group with Blade, and we have met several times, and I will update you on the primary areas that we decided to focus on about the group, or with the group, but I want to just share with you a little bit about funding. So several states, including Minnesota, sued drug manufacturers, other companies, and individuals who contributed to the opioid epidemic. The first settlements were announced in the fall of 2019, and Crow Wing County received its initial settlement amount in October of 22. We're slated to receive around $2.5 million over the next 18 years. This is the amount from the initial settlement and does not include many of the pending settlements that are still out there. As of 11/9 of this year, we have received $556,624. So we still have a little ways to go to meet the additional $2 million. So as a part of our work, we conducted a community survey to understand how the community believed that we should spend the opioid settlement dollars. And the group identified 4 primary areas, including prevention, treatment and recovery, harm reduction, and working in the criminal justice system. So within these 4 areas, we developed 6 primary multifaceted strategies that included 2 in prevention, and then which include secondary prevention focused on kids and families, to expand the capacity of programs targeting families impacted by substance use disorder, and increase reunification rates and safe placement options, and to provide focused education, and outreach for children in foster care, whose primary reason for placement is parental substance misuse. In addition to that, we found that the community wanted us to provide school education and training around adverse childhood experiences, healthy positive outcomes, substance use disorder, and positive community norms. We also had a strategy of targeting the treatment and recovery area around parental substance abuse and expand our child supportive services for individuals seeking outpatient treatment, create inpatient opportunities that are supportive environments for individuals and kids. We had a strategy with harm reduction that included support services for kids and families affected by substance use disorders and training for professionals such as teachers, law enforcement, and others. And then 2 strategies within the criminal justice system around treatment and recovery integration and strengthening of substance use disorder, mental health, and primary care services and treatments throughout the criminal justice system, post-incarceration programs to improve post-release programming for community integration, and continued care and transition services for individuals after release, and help them to re-enter the workforce upon their release. So with any strategy or implementation, there are some obstacles. We do have limited resources and limited service providers, so we're working on building up that area. And then we are working to identify ways to measure the effectiveness of many of the programs and services. In the spring of 2023, the BLADE Opioid Coalition launched the the Protect Our People Partnership Opportunity. That can get a little tricky to say. And this was funded through Crow Wing County's allotment of the National Opioid Settlement. The primary purpose of the initiative was to grant up to $200,000 to local projects to reduce the impact of the opioid epidemic in Crow Wing County by supporting families, youth, schools, and service within the criminal justice system, so those priority areas that I identified. In designing the initiative, we learned about participatory grant-making methods, and we brainstormed how we could include the participatory grant-making method into our way of working and providing these grants. So we convened our group, and we talked about our vision for this project that included collaboration, working with the community, making sure we were inclusive. We wanted to reduce stigma, make connections, empower youth, and provide resources from peers that actually help, and then hope and change. So during the summer of '23, we invited community members and agencies to advance collaborative community-based work through a funding opportunity that would impact one or more of the 3 primary strategies. These strategies were based on the results, as I had mentioned, of the community survey. They should have expanded capacity of programs targeting families impacted by substance use disorder, focused on increasing unification rates and safe placement options, providing focused education and outreach for kids in foster care, and then the funding to support the schools and training, and then increasing and strengthening the services and treatment of substance use disorder for those in the criminal justice system. So we had 17 total projects and 26 total ballots were cast. Each voter selected 10 projects to recommend funding, and based on the totals, the top 11 projects in the document that I had shared, in the green shading, which apparently didn't, oh yeah, it's there, just very, very light. So the top 11 projects in the green shading are recommended for full funding. You can see that some projects applied for the full $20,000 and others applied for a lesser amount that they needed to implement their programs. After allocating funds to the top 11, $6,150 remains of the $200,000 designated. The grant committee that both focused on the listening to the presentations and then scored each is recommending partial funding for the 2 projects in the yellow, the Bold But Seldom Told and Nature Heals. Once the grants are approved for funding, the applicants will enter into a contract much like we did with the ARPA dollars. And in addition, each grantee will be required to meet as a group quarterly to give updates on their work, share how they're working together, and provide updates to the coalition to ensure accountability. They will also complete an end-of-year grant report, and we will bring that information back to you at this time. I did send out all of the applications to you and did note that one application, Lakes Area Recovery, did withdraw their application, so there are 16 grants then that we were reviewing. And we are here today to see what questions you might have. We'd like to bring this forward to the county board meeting for final approval, but thought we should bring it here first to talk through the applications and answer any questions you might have. Do you have anything you want to add?
No, you did wonderful.
It was a lot.
Okay, questions?
Yeah, Madam Chair. Terry, how many of these, or Kara, I'll get one of these names right one of these days. How many of these people or these organizations are already doing this work?
That is a really good question. So when you say this work, that gets a little tricky,
Okay.
right? So Lighthouse Beginnings, just starting at the top of the list. They're fully formed and running their operation and ready to go to implement the $20,000 request that they have. Lakes Area Restorative Justice is an existing program. The SHOP also is an existing program. Minnesota Prevention and Recovery Alliance, they are also an existing program in the community, as is Timber Bay, the Work Crew Sponsorship. Wellness in the Woods, Relationship Safety Alliance are all active in the community. Jenkins Sober House is not quite up where they need to be, but they're working on getting there. And then Restore Recovery, they are not yet in our area. They are looking for funding to expand. They have a few different homes down in the cities, and so they know what they're doing. They just have to find a place up here that makes good sense. And then finally, Advocates for Reproductive Education and Lakes Area Alano are also up and running. Bold but seldom told, that ties back to the 100 Cups of Coffee conversations that Lowell Johnson had with community members. They would like to write a book, share that book then and a workbook with the recovery community to kind of guide some discussions. So the conversations have taken place, but I don't believe the book has yet been published. And then the Northland Arboretum is active and
The question was, are we going to have more providers in the area, was pretty much what I said, because we have some that are already doing this, this will enhance their work.
right, just the one is new to the area, but these programs are expanding their capacity too, that are already in the community.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes. Go ahead, Paul.
So, Kara, I guess this is actually, I think it's with this money, it's a great opportunity for, I don't know, I'm not that smart, but I would call it a social experiment to see if this money and sending it out to these providers of services in 5 years, if it has helped. Are you putting any kind of measures or any, how are you going to measure this if this is even done any good in like 3 or 5 years down the road? Is there going to be any way to see if substance abuse is down in 5 years, if it's helped? You know where I'm going with that?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, Commissioner. And we're working with the potential grantees to develop some sort of measurement to see, number of individuals served. That's an easy thing to measure. But what's the recidivism rate for individuals entering their programs or entering maybe the jail systems? And we can get some not only good numbers, but also, I believe, some pretty good stories about impact. So it might not all be in the numbers of impact, but also some success stories as well that I'm sure we're going to have. In addition, we received the Drug Free Communities grant, and so we'll be doing some measurement through there with the Wilder Foundation. That's included in the grant. And so I'm hoping that somehow we can merge the work that Wilder is doing with Blade and the DFC grant as well. So we'll have some actual official data too through the Wilder Foundation.
Yeah,
as
that
well.
would be easy to include. Maybe at our quarterly meetings, each participant would take a survey, and we could then use that as a measurement
Yep.
ongoing.
Yeah, I think.
Well,
I'm
I
sorry.
would just say that I hope and I pray that this all works. Sometimes I think in society, we've gotten to the point where we think if we throw some money at something, that fixes all the problems. And so it'll be interesting to see. I mean, seems like a lot of money over several years. And it'll be interesting. I guess I'd like to know if it's helping. And if it isn't helping, I don't know, then what do we do is my question. I don't know. This is a tough deal. I was just watching something on the news the other night about out in where they've literally legalized everything out in Portland, Oregon, and it is not working. It is not working. at least out there, the police department is just overwhelmed, and people are, it's like zombies walking. People are laying in the streets, and it's, I don't know, it's a scary deal. But I just hope that I really hope that this works. I really do.
Thank you. Me too.
Yeah.
One of the cool things about the work that we're doing is really including the recovery community. And so having peer supports for those folks that are exiting the jail to help them navigate and find a new way of living within the community. We're expanding that program. Minnesota Prevention and Recovery Alliance, or MINPRA, is having a role in that as well. And then we're really getting into the schools. So it's not DARE program by any means, but more of a presentation and then support with folks that have lived that experience and are significantly younger than me in the schools, helping support kids to make healthy decisions too. So we're trying a multi-pronged approach here with the different grant applicants, and so we're going to give it our best shot.
Yep.
Madam Chair, if I might ask, Kara, you're giving out these dollars, and is this a one-year attempt at this? What about year 2 and 3 and 4, to Commissioner Coring's point? I mean, you'll be analyzing and looking at the metrics for success, or whether they're carrying out their actual mission that they say they do. So there'll be a second round then, potentially?
That will be up to you guys. So we thought we would try and see how this first round goes. The process went pretty darn smooth. We got some feedback that maybe it wasn't quite long enough. Each grant applicant did a presentation to the group, and then we had a bit of discussion and questions, and then we all scored each grant application. So that seemed to go smooth. So we've learned some things, and we could potentially look at doing it again, but we'll bring that forward to you guys with a recommendation.
When you say the pushback was it wasn't long enough, the application period wasn't long enough, or
The
what?
presentation time, so we gave them each
Oh.
5 minutes, and
They're
then we had,
correct. They are correct.
yeah, gave them a couple minutes for questions. We tried to smush it into a shorter meeting period, and lesson learned, we probably need to go longer. So,
Yep. Well, I think for transparency purposes, it would be better to give them a fair amount of time to present what they see their goals are and where they're going to
Yeah.
go with it, so.
we tried to be efficient, but that kind of bit us in the end, so, but we still think we got an okay
For the first-
synopsis.
Yeah, for our first run, I think it went pretty good.
So one other question, when I look at these, primarily it's focused in kind of the Brainerd-Baxter area. We're a much larger county than that.
Yep.
Any thoughts about why organizations from other corners of the county didn't apply?
That's a
Or-
really good question. Do you want to speak to Min?
So far, we've had 3 really good questions, just so you know. I'm keeping track of that
I
up
gotta
here.
stop saying that then, don't I?
I think mine was the best question.
I have to agree with Commissioner Coring on that one, but
Oh, jeez. Oh,
I
boy.
think for the school district anyway, we're focusing right now on ISD 181. Do you want to speak to your efforts on?
Yeah, so our DFC grant it's, a couple years, 1 to 4, 1 to 5. Our first year is targeting the Brainerd-Baxter area. And year 2 to 4 will be expanding to Crosby and Pequot. And so it is our plan, and we're just focusing and implementing the Know the Truth program, which is brought to us with Minnesota Prevention and Recovery Alliance, which was one of our applicants. And that's just to expand the prevention program, and just providing the peer support and substance use education and support for our youth here. And then, of course, it is Crow Wing County as a whole. We're just, for year 1, focusing in Brainerd.
So, follow-up question then. That's tied to 3 school districts, which are public school districts, which we
Right.
know there are many other schools. And so
Yes.
you're targeting high school students, I'm assuming, that must, or at least whatever grades you're targeting.
Yep.
But there are other organizations that are schools that we're not targeting. So are we forgetting, and is there a gap in our effort to maximize the education?
So definitely not that's not our plan. I think we just needed to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And then continue to grow. We've been I have done presentations and parent training at the Brainerd Learning Center. And then next week we'll be in the 7th grade health class. And so we're going to be in the Brainerd High School 9th grade, and also a large support and scheduled presentations at the LEC as well. So just kind of that's the beginning, it's a start. We just received the DFC grant in September. But yes, I do have a list of the other not public schools.
I would encourage you to continue to look at that, and I realize you got to get your feet wet first.
Right.
But as you get your feet wet, look to expand that conversation out there.
And to your point, Commissioner, our focus is in the Brainerd-Baxter area with a number of these projects, with the exception of the Jenkins Sober House. So next round of grants, perhaps targeting those other communities a little more. We did put it out on our website. Darcy did a lot of communication in relation to the grant application process, but we can do better. And we have a number of services that apply to the entire community with the jail and peer supports that way. So, and then different sober homes with getting folks in there and getting help that they need, which isn't necessarily community specific, but point well taken.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Chair? I'd like to put this into some broader context because I think Commissioner Coring's point is a really important one. This is not a solvable problem.
Right.
As if there is a beginning, we bring resources to bear, we resolve the issue, and it's done. Society has been struggling with chemical dependency since alcohol was invented. We know what prohibition looked like. We tried that. That didn't work. What we also know from research is that about 1 in 10 people are going to struggle with the freedom that our society attaches to things that are addictive. 1 in 10 are going to struggle. If it was as simple as let's cure the 1 in 10 in our population that are currently struggling with chemical dependency, that would be one thing. And I think that's how we tend to think about it, Commissioner Coring, as if we just get the resources to the right people, we'll solve it. Nobody knows better than you do how much money is being put into the advertising for alcohol and for drugs that are addictive. You need to think about these opioid settlement dollars in a context. They could afford it. There were so many opioids sold in this country that they could afford these settlements,
Right.
and it didn't tip them over.
No, didn't blink.
And so I need you to think about the forces in our society that are actively working and creating a pipeline for the next generation of alcoholics and addicts. That is what we face as a society. On the one hand, creating them. On the other hand, trying to treat those who are struggling with it. It's not a solvable problem. It's a chronic health condition for society. It will always be with us. And so the effort, Paul, is to help those who are currently struggling and to prevent as many as we can from becoming in a struggle. And we'll never be done.
Well said.
Yeah.
This is our attempt to move the needle. It's our first attempt to move the needle with these resources. It won't be the last. There are a lot of resources, not as many as the other way, but finally there's at least some resources, I think, from those who are creating some of the issues to help resolve some of the issues in our community. We certainly struggle with the impacts of addiction in our community all over the place. This will be brought forward for your consideration unless there are objections. Any objections to moving this forward?
Any other questions?
Nope.
No, the only coming off from what you said, Administrator, is that for the producers of the product, this is just the cost of doing business.
Yep. That's
Just
exactly
Just an
right.
expense item on their thing.
It'll be a tax write-off.
I don't know if it would change the way they're going to market or not.
I don't think it has.
No, okay, thank you.
Would you like me to present on this, or would you like it on the consent?
What do you think?
Personally, I would like to see you present, it's more of a public forum then, and that'll be part of the push out there to notify the public that
Yeah.
we're coming, and on the others that we're a good partner.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you all.
so much. Next, Tim Hoyle.
Madam Chair, members of the board, back on October 11th, and I think that was shortly after a city council meeting, I got a letter from Jennifer Bergman, and it was based on a city council meeting on October 2nd, and they were discussing the funding allocation between the county and the Brainerd, and the city of Brainerd for the Brainerd Lakes Regional Airport. What they were concerned about is that the county levy for the airport applies within the city limits of Brainerd, and then the city of Brainerd also taxes residents for the airport. Now, I've heard that referred to as double taxation. No, it is not. No, it is not. Nobody paid $1 for the airport to the county and $1 for the airport to the city. That's not how it worked. They were being taxed more than once. They were being taxed by the county and the city. To put it into perspective, the city of Brainerd represents 6% of the tax base of the county. And so 6% of the money we were putting in came from residents of the city or taxpayers of the city of Brainerd. That's the issue. So 6% of $157,000 is a $9,000 problem. It's not a $157,000 problem, it's a $9,000 problem. To put it into exact terms, right now, that's $9,420. After conversations with you, by that Friday, I had gotten back to the city administrator with some options after having private conversations with each of you about what could we do here. I sent a letter to them. I did not hear back from them for a couple of weeks. I sent overtures. I did not hear back and did not hear back. So we sent a letter on November 2nd. I sent a letter on November 2nd, and you have been copied on it, of course. And it laid out the options that we could consider. It's been reported in the press, so I'm not going to walk through the options again. You know what they are. The press knows what they are. It's been reported, so I'm not going to walk through them again. What the city council met last night and decided to accept the county's proposal to increase our levy by $9,400. They would decrease their levy by $9,400. That leaves the taxpayers in the citizens of Brainerd whole. On the other two topics, airport ownership and HRA trust fund funding, the city council directed city staff to explore those topics further with county staff. So in a nutshell, I think that this might have come about because of concerns about the housing trust fund and extending it into the city of Brainerd. What I'm pleased to be able to report is we've made progress on that question, if I read my newspaper articles correctly. And we're making progress on the issue of the airport. And we want to have a continuing conversation about the airport, but we have a short-term solution, and we'll still talk about a longer-term solution. All in all, I'd call that a pretty decent day. So what I would suggest is that we agree to increase our levy by $9,420 for '24. Let them decrease their levy by an equivalent amount. The airport is left whole. I think we need to have a longer-term conversation, though. It is about how the airport is funded and run. And, you know, in my conversations with Stephen Wright, the airport manager, I think he's well aware of this as well, and they are trying to get us there. The airport should be a self-sustaining operation, just in the same way that the landfill is a self-sustaining operation. I would argue they have healthy fund balances right now and may not have needed our contributions the last number of years. They are in the process of building more hangars, which they rent out to pilots to store airplanes. That is a revenue generator for them. And I think they have a plan to get self-sufficient. They're not quite there yet, although that might be arguable. So, all in all, I think there's a future plan. I think there's a strategy. I think we're talking about what makes the most sense for how to fund a public piece of infrastructure. I think it's a good conversation. So that's the update I have for you, and happy to answer any questions or take feedback and direction.
So, Madam Chair, Tim, will this be on the agenda then at the next board meeting to increase that contribution to the airport
That's what I would propose.
under consent?
Up to you.
Consent would be fine.
Consent's fine.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, but we've actually already set the levy amount, and I was always under the impression we can go down, but we can't go up. So I think we can't do anything for '24 because we can't go up by 9,000 and whatever amount you said. So I guess my druthers would be continue. I watched the video last night of the meeting, and it almost seems like they did not give a hard no on the county. Just, I hate to say the county taking control. We're not taking control of anything, but the county just assuming the responsibility for it. They, at least I saw some of the members on the city council said that they wanted more information. I don't know what other information that would be, but maybe we can continue the conversations going. And if they want to do that, I think that all 5 of us on the county board would be okay with that. I think if it doesn't go that way, I think we're fine with that also. At least that's my perception. But I don't know that we can increase our amount. Tim, am I right or wrong?
Madam Chair, members, Commissioner Coring, you cannot increase the levy for it. So if you decide to do that in '24, you have to do it out of fund balance. It's $9,400, and so it's not material in the overall scheme of things, but you could wait until you can levy it. You are correct that it is too late to levy it.
Yeah, I'm not interested in taking that. I, for one, with my one vote, I'm not interested in taking that out of fund balance. If we move forward and they decide that they want to continue on the way we're going and they want us to levy that amount for 2025, I'd be okay with that, but I'm not okay with taking it out of fund balance to put that amount into the airport. That's my position.
Madam Chair, I attended the meeting last night, and in the interest of keeping and building a relationship with the city council over at Brainerd, I am in favor of doing that, taking it out of our fund balance. I think that we made an offer to them. They accepted that offer, and I think that it would show good faith that we're willing to do it. Again, it's not material. It's very little money. And I think there's an appetite. If I read that wrong, Councilmember Terry can correct me, but there's a real appetite for them to disengage from the airport at some point. And again, to your point, Commissioner Coring, I don't know what information they want either. And I'm comfortable going either way if that's whatever their choice is. I'm not going to make that for them, but I think that it would be wise for us to make this move, spend this $9,000 and keep a relationship going forward that at this point at least is very positive.
Madam Chair, Administrator Houle, how many years have we been collecting that? And I mean, right now you have the number at 9,400. In previous years, have we been collecting that in previous years?
Yes, and I would argue that the percent that Brainerd represents of the county's tax base has been slowly decreasing over time. And so this was a larger issue 40 years ago than it is today.
And nothing was done in those previous years?
That is correct.
So this has been going on and on and on for...
Since we have been a party to the airport in about the 1940s.
Oh, so I would have to concur with Commissioner Barrows that we've already collected this money in previous years that we didn't have really. The problem never got taken care of in previous years, and here we're taking care of it now. So,
It doesn't appear that anyone thought it was a problem in previous years.
well, until it was brought up to us.
It certainly was not a problem in the 1940s.
Right,
I
right.
think we can safely say that. This was brought up once before. I forget the time period. I want to say about 2002. At that point, no action was taken.
Okay, so it was brought up way back then.
Well, I'd say probably don't put it on the consent agenda.
Okay?
What are your thoughts?
I'll reach out to Commissioner Hoag as well. He's not here today. See what he thinks, and then based on that, I'll bring forward an action. I won't put it on the consent calendar. And then you guys can do what you wish to do. Okay?
All right,
All right?
thank you.
Very good. I don't know if there's anybody else here about the airport, but I also included for you, just so the general public knows, I did copy for you the article in this morning's Brainerd Dispatch about last night's city council meeting. Some of you were there. And then I also copied for you the email that I got this morning. It came late last night from Patrick Wusso notifying me of what the council's decision was. You have that as well. So, Madam Chair, I'll move it forward.
All right, thank you. Is Gary online? Okay, there he is.
Our bus driver.
You're up, Gary. You're up. Oh, really? Yes.
I'm very efficient with my items, you know.
Thank you.
Well, good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. First thing we have for you is to discuss the school lease on what we call the, kind of over by the Poor Farm. If it's all right, I'll have Reed Teesey is here. He is going to bring all of us up to speed on maybe where they're at, the school is at with, if they're interested in pursuing a purchase of the property or not. But so I'll let Reed go ahead and.
You look vaguely familiar.
Vaguely familiar, yeah, a couple times in the last weeks.
Met before.
Yeah, a couple times, yeah.
Is that chair pretty comfortable? You're okay with
It seems
that?
familiar, yeah. Good morning, Commissioners. Reed T.C., Director of Buildings and Grounds, Brainerd Public Schools. As Director Griffin mentioned, we've been talking about the school farm for probably, well, most recently, a couple years now. We've obviously been doing a one-year renewal on the high school farm, called the high school farm property, but the 80 acres on Highway 25 and TC Road. You may or may not know a little bit of the history. I'll just do a brief synopsis and tell you kind of where we're at today for Commissioner Lubke, who's probably new to this conversation. The two 40-acre parcels, or the 80 acres in total, has been operated as a high school farm since probably back in the 60s, probably 60s, maybe early 70s. And there has been a really low dollar mutual agreement lease between the school district, ISD 181, and Crow Wing County. Again, for that property to be used as a school farm, which had been in operation up through probably early 2000s-ish timeframe. In which then the farming operation kind of slowed down a lot, and they decided to take that operation and keep it mainly holistically at the high school, bringing some small animals of husbandry into the school there, rabbits and chickens and of the animals of the sort. So ultimately, there's the two parcels there. One is all wooded. The one to the north is mainly all wooded. The one to the south is primarily wooded. There's just a small amount of wetland on that west side, kind of where the properties, the T is there. And so the point of interest here is that the district would like to continue to operate out there, and Commissioner Coring online and I have had conversations. I think we talked in Costco once in passing about his desire and the Land Services Department desire to continue to get these properties, one, out of tax forfeit status and out into either other units of the government or into the private sector. And so that's kind of been our directive the last 2 years, is to just kind of think about that. More so this year, let's get something going and really move forward with this. And so in my conversations with the school board, we still have a desire for operation of the maintenance facility out there. That's where we do all of our winter off-season maintenance for all of our grounds equipment. We do have some vehicles out there. We have some storage out there. We use the greenhouse. We partner with the senior center, and they grow plants out there for their plant sale. And so there is still some operation out there that we are interested in. And so really the conversation lately has been just coming up with what's the right value, or what's the fair value for this. If we were to buy this out, what would be the right value for it? I don't think a long-term lease really makes a whole lot of sense for us to continue to lease that out. We've been operating it long enough now under lease conditions. I think we could decide on procuring that property. And so I have conversations with our school board. We have another meeting coming up next Wednesday in our facilities committee where we're going to discuss this and further, and I'll bring back an update from you guys on where we're going with this. But in the context of it, we started with appraised value of the properties, Gary, and then in doing some research, we understand that the school district probably built those buildings over the course of its lease over those 50-some, 60-some years that we've operated out there. So we've built it, we've maintained it, we've been operating it as such, and so really it just comes down to, again, what is that fair value?
And so one of the things that we've, informally been kind of talking about is, if we come up with a value for the property, does the county only charge, let's say, the school for the land value of that since they built the buildings? And so currently we have about $315,000 on the buildings alone. And so that'd be a decision, that when it comes into a price potentially that's paid for the property, would be for your consideration if you want to move forward with just land value or the whole estimated market value with the buildings.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I for one would be okay with just the coming up with a value for just the bare land and selling it to the school district just for that price. Being that they built the buildings and have maintained the buildings, I don't think that makes sense to me to charge them for that. So if we can come to an agreement on the cost of the land, and I don't know if you want the whole 80 acres or if you just want the south 40 and then we'll liquidate the other 40, it's up to you. But I for one think we should just focus on the bare land value. And if you guys want to take it for that, I would be, I think that makes sense to me.
Madam Chair, I agree with Commissioner Coring. Just look at the land value.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you tell us if you're interested in the whole 80 or just the 40?
I think at this point, just from a continuation of operations, we would. We've got, just like you guys, there's thoughts and ideas that are rolling around in our operation on some things in the future that we may need property for. We're working with the city on a few other options for some of the property that we had set aside for some schools too, in the future, that I just don't know that we would see them come into fruition here, obviously with the referendum and society as far as like population growth and all of those things. So, we've got a bunch of irons in the fire, Commissioner Barrows, where I'd hate to short us on an opportunity in the future. And so for right now, if we can do it for that land value, an estimated land value, then I think we would probably look at doing it that route. And again, I'll defer to our school board members on their final desires and final wishes, but I think that's the direction we've kind of been given from them.
Good.
Madam Chair. Gary, now this, you said it was tax forfeited land. How long ago? It's been, I remember when I had businesses down here, I remember that property out there, so.
Yeah.
How long has it been?
It's been, I don't have the exact date, Commissioner Lubke, but I know it's been for a long time. 50 plus years probably,
Okay,
if not
okay,
longer.
So
I think the lease has been.
The lease has been about 50 years,
our
Commissioner. So
concern
probably-
of something
yeah.
happening with tax forfeiture probably wouldn't cover this.
I don't believe this
I
will
don't
be.
believe it probably would either.
I think the risk is very minimal here that they would look back that far on the recent Supreme Court case.
Prior to that, it was the county's poor farm. So It's
Yeah,
been
yeah,
60,
okay.
70 years
Yeah,
that
it's
schools
been
use.
Yeah.
Prior to that, it was
Yeah,
used as a
I would
forefront,
concur
so-
with Commissioner Coring and with Barrows that,
Really? Okay.
with the price and.
The only thing I wanted to discuss, then, the lease does expire, I believe, at the end of the year. Are we okay just kind of status quo while we work out the, a potential, transaction here?
I'm okay with just status quo. Instead of doing another 1-year lease, I think we trust each other enough to just work out the details, however long it takes.
What is the lease on that, can I ask?
1 year,
$1.
$25 for a year. I mean, it's very, like I said,
It's
it's,
not going to break the bank one way or the
I
other.
don't think so, and it's not going to solve either of our budgets, no.
Okay.
And again, I agree with Commissioner Coring. That's twice today I've agreed with Commissioner Coring.
I can't believe it.
I want that noted.
Yeah, duly noted.
Yeah, so I guess what I would propose, obviously, we have our, like I mentioned earlier, we have our facilities committee coming up next Wednesday. I would propose something to them that I would work with Director Griffin, and we would come up with some sort of a language agreement on this sale transfer, and then we would bring it to each respective board accordingly and get a signature on that document, and then we would move forward from there.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reed.
Very good, thank you.
Sorry for being late. I usually am not, but
She didn't have to ring the gavel.
Well, you're kind of almost not late because you shouldn't have started until 10.
I'll let Chris, I believe Chris and our consultant is up next. I'll get out of their way.
They are, so, thank you.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Good morning. Therese, do you have the power? Oh, she is just, I shouldn't even ask. How dare I even question her? What was I thinking? Good morning. We're here this morning to give you an update on where we're at with the comprehensive plan and what's been happening over the last couple months, and then kind of what the steps are going forward, and just looking to get some feedback and just really give you guys an update on what we've got so far from public comments and kind of some of the themes we might be seeing from that. And I'll let our two consultants here introduce themselves here, but I do want to first say thank you to the three of you for showing up to that road tour we took yesterday. That was really, really helpful to have you there. We also had 3 members from the Planning Commission, Board of Adjustment attended as well, and then we had staff and that. But I really think that was informative and great discussion, and I think a lot of good notes were taken. That's going to really kind of give us some guidance as we go forward as far as, what are the issues and priorities from a county board perspective and stuff. So I just want to first say thank you for that very much. But I think what I'll do is I'll flip the football over to these two. They'll introduce themselves, and we'll kind of walk through that PowerPoint. So,
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, and good morning, Commissioners. Good to see you all again, and I also want to reiterate Chris's thank you for the tour. I think I got at least 6 pages of notes, so it was very helpful, and it's always just good to see the, talk about things, but then also see them in person too, as we talk about them. So again, I'm Robin Kaufman. I'm a senior community planner with Bolton and Mink, and I'm joined today with my colleague, so I'll let her introduce herself.
Yes, good morning. Sorry I was not on the tour. I missed out, apparently, and I will read the notes and try to make up for it. I'm Moira Howenstein. I'm also a senior planner, and I'm also an architect. I spent 15 years in private practice and then 10 years in government.
So I think,
yeah,
go ahead.
I think we'll go right to the PowerPoint. Unless any questions to start with at all, or to begin with? Okay, super. I think.
Did we want to take questions as we go too?
Yeah, I
if something
think
comes up?
if there's questions as they come up, feel free to stop us and for clarification or that kind of thing. So I think that's probably the best way to handle it.
All right.
Okay. Well, we'll start. I'm going to start out with a few, introductory, I got to click too. Okay.
Gotta click and talk.
A few introductory slides, just to maybe talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. I believe we have an hour, right?
Yeah.
Or so?
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. So we're going to just provide a little bit of an update of where we're at. I'm going to talk a little bit about engagement, and then Moira's going to go through probably the majority of the PowerPoint with just an overview of what we've learned so far, community profile, existing conditions, trends, and what trends are looking like for the future, and then also what we are starting to hear from the public. And then we're going to talk a little bit about our planning approach, and then hopefully have a discussion. So. Maybe to just get started, we are probably about a third of the way through the project right now. So you can see this is our project schedule, a lot of engagement. It was a lot of work as far as getting the website up and some of the videos and social media posted. So we're well underway with that. We're going to be closing the public, the survey that's out there right now. We're going to be closing that at the end of the month. And so that'll kind of end phase 1 of the engagement process. And then we've also started working on drafting the plan. So the first deliverable that you saw was the existing conditions, which Moira is going to be talking about. So that was a big lift because there's a lot to go through. And so she's going to be talking about that. And then you can see December, January, and February, a lot of the winter months, we're going to be spending drafting the plan based on what we've heard so far.
Oh,
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Yes.
How many people from the general public weighed in? How many people from the townships weighed in, and how many lake associations weighed in? Do you have that information?
I do, and actually I will go to the next slide, if that's a great segue for my next slide.
Oh, okay.
That was a really good question.
That was a great
Paul.
segue.
That was
Great
a really
question.
good question.
Was he set up for that? I just want to
He
know.
was.
No, I was not.
No, you each have your questions you're supposed to ask, right? You've got them prepared? Okay.
I got that list over here.
Oops, I went through it. Why is it going so fast? Okay, so as far as engagement to date, we have a map that's posted, and I've lost track of the dots, but it's probably close to, I know it's well over 50, it's probably getting closer to 100, so we have an interactive map that people can add comments on, and then there's starting to be some engagement on the dots too, so someone might make a comment and then do a thumbs up or say I agree. So that has been pretty engaging. You can kind of see where they're clustered. We had an online, we have an online survey, and I think we have about 210 responses from that so far. We had a community meeting in that we didn't have very high turnout, but we had a great discussion afterwards. So, and then you did a WJJY interview.
Right.
And that was really helpful. I think we had the video, they actually do a little podcast, so we put a link on the website so people, even if they don't attend a meeting, can still listen and get that information.
Quick question for
Yeah.
you, Madam Chair, if I might. Under public community meeting, and again, you weren't here earlier, but my concern is it's a big county. We hold a meeting and it's in Brainerd or Baxter, but we're not engaging the 4 corners of the county.
Yes.
Your experience with not doing that, I would think that would leave a big gap for those outliers
I can answer that one if you like.
to have some input into, or feel like they should have some input into a comprehensive plan that's going to impact all of them.
Well, Chair and Commissioner Barrows, we had that discussion at the beginning we had actually had a plan of wanting to go out and do individual meetings in each district to have those community engagements, and the decision was made at that point to just have the one community meeting down here in Brainerd. So we had that discussion at the beginning, and it was decided that everybody preferred to have just the one bigger meeting instead of having the meetings throughout the other areas of the.
So what was the rationale for that?
We asked the 5 commissioners if they wanted each individual ones.
You've been asked.
I don't remember that.
So,
They actually
Everything
asked
goes in
us
my
if
area
we-
anyway, so it didn't mean to.
yeah, so that was the feedback. They just prefer to have it be one,
Oh, okay.
one group, community outreach evening than to do different ones throughout the county, so.
Okay.
Steve, they did, if you remember, it's hard to remember all the stuff we have, but if you remember, they asked about having one in each commissioner district, and I think we opted to have just one meeting, if I recall correctly.
Okay, that's what the chair
Yeah.
is saying too, so I probably forgot,
Yeah.
so I apologize.
No problem.
No problem.
Back to the slide. I'll mention too, what we're finding, have several other projects that I'm working on, and public meetings, especially post-COVID, the attendance just is really low, so it's not, I don't think it's necessarily specific to Crow Wing County. I think it's just kind of where people are at and schedules and whatnot. So what we're finding is that, doing the radio interviews, doing online surveys, doing the interactive maps, that's really where a lot of people are providing input. But to your point, Commissioner, is that we do ask people what zip code they come from, and so we will be able to map and maybe see, what the representation is for input. So,
I guess when I looked at your map up there, what I see is in Commissioner Coring's district, down in that southeast corner, there doesn't seem to be a lot of engagement. And so I get concerned about that. We're not getting their viewpoint.
Well, Commissioner Barrows, I would point out, I think the unfortunate part of doing these types of these projects are that people typically get engaged when it's going to impact them personally. And so that's why when we have ordinance, amendments and change that, we don't have hardly any people coming in and making comments or having a discussion about it. So it is, because a comp plan is pretty high level stuff. And so it's kind of hard for people to really, maybe, people who don't do it every day, to know where to weigh in. And sometimes we get the feedback, which is way into the weeds of, we should have an ordinance that does X. Well, that's not a comp plan issue, that's a day-to-day. So it is hard for people to really understand what that comp plan is, and so it's really more of a process of getting stakeholder groups, some of the people who, might have a better representation of some of those, different folks in the community. So I think it's a different type of getting feedback from the community, I think.
Okay.
We did do some articles. We did do emails to stakeholder groups. So I sent out an email to a lot of the watershed, not watershed, the lake associations. And I know we've gotten several, in addition to the surveys, we've just gotten direct emails that have gone to Chris. So we have gotten, especially from trails and the Lakeshore Associations.
Yeah, we got some from lake associations, still hoping to get more. We did have a kickoff meeting with the townships earlier this spring, and then we followed back up with them a couple times through the summer and sent out emails and asked them to get feedback and fill a form out, and I'm not getting much. So I just haven't gotten much feedback.
They've had their opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did we hear anything from WAPOA or
Nothing
whatever
official
it's
from
called?
APOA. I have not heard anything official from
okay.
APOA. Not yet.
It'll be interesting, Chris, to your point, once, this is fairly high level, and maybe once we start, when we roll out in our next phase, some proposals or maybe some changes to land use or
And they have something to
things.
bounce off of a little bit, just to at least think about, and I think that'll help. We'll probably get more engagement at that point, so.
Okay.
Yeah. So with that, I think, that was all I had for project updates, so unless there's any other, I'm gonna hand it over to Moira to go through what we're hearing.
Yeah, so I have several slides. Bear with us. I know you've received the draft of the existing conditions, so you probably know a lot of the data. You live here. So as we think through the information and you hear it one more time, we ask you to think about what the information is signaling. What are the things that we're trying to anticipate, forecast for, prepare? Because the comp plan is really a high-level document that has the goals and policies, right? And it is at the top of that pyramid peak, and then your land use ordinance is really the how. How do we do approvals? What are the procedures? What are the standards? So at the end of it, if we change things enough, we are going to ensure that the land use complies with the comp plan, so that may require some changes down the line. Just to get the hierarchy of the documents right, I think is important. So bear with us with some of these points that you've already read about. So as of this year, the county is actually going to exceed 68,000 in population, and the median age is a little more mature than the state. The state is actually, the median age is 38. However, you're being kept young by the millennials and the Gen Zs. As you can see, 40% of them are make up the cohorts, but most of the population is over 60, and that's just the reality of who is here, and then we can plan for it. in the future, we can look, our data looks a couple of years ahead, and then it looks 10 years ahead, and then all the way to 2040. But as of 2028, the growth is projected to be at 0.3% annually. And if we look at 2030, the population is actually forecasted to exceed 70,000. And if we go further to 2040, it's going to actually exceed 73,000. And the median age will continue to mature a little bit, not a lot, to 45 and a half years of age. And the largest part of the cohorts will be over 65, between 65 and 74. So we are a growing and aging community, and we are very, very wise.
Would you see that kind of plateauing at some point, though, and then tipping as the baby boomers pass away?
That would be an interesting theory. However, I don't have a factual answer for you on that. Of course, it would be,
I'd like to know before I pass away, just so
I will say yes
ask
then.
whether-
So I will say yes. However, it is a normal trend in the rural areas of Minnesota, and not just Minnesota, but the U.S. This is a normal trend that we are seeing.
Okay.
And the way we've separated the slides is we've separated them per the chapters that we intend to write for you. We are going to co-author this, so nothing's set in stone. If you want to do something differently, we can. What we're going to talk about first is the existing condition, then the issues that we are seeing, and from what the public is telling us and what you are telling us. And then we're going to talk about the trends as well. So those three things touched upon for each element. So as far as housing, we have a lot of housing units, almost 42,000, but we only have about 27,500 households, and that is because of your seasonal and vacation residents. And so you have that discrepancy. Most of the homes, 83%, are single-family dwellings. They usually have 2 to 3 bedrooms. The stock is relatively new compared to the state. It's from the 80s. We're talking the ballpark. And the pricing is somewhere between $200,000 and $400,000 in terms of median prices. There is, compared to the state, lower median household values in the county, and there are also lower wages. So those are more aligned. You don't want higher pricing in homes and then lower wages. At least they're both trending lower than what the state is seeing. Yes?
Any historical comparisons on that data?
Historical comparisons,
The number of houses, we're lower than the median house value of the state.
correct, yes.
Has that gap grown or shrunk?
Over what period of time?
Pick a period of time.
Okay, so we're usually-
Since the last comp plan.
Yeah, so this data I would say is in the last 5 years. So that gap has actually become greater. Post-COVID, we have not recovered yet as a county since the pandemic. We are on the way to a recovery, and we'll talk about that in a minute under trends, but it has not fully recovered, so that gap has become a little
I'm
bit
not
bigger.
sure I'm with you on that stat.
Okay, well,
That
we
the
can
gap
dig into that a
between
little bit.
housing costs here in the metro, I think it
Okay.
has shrunk,
Okay,
not
yeah.
grown.
Yeah. Pricing has definitely not gone down compared to, 10 years ago, but the wages and the homes are lower than the state, for sure.
Yeah, they still are, I just don't think they are as much as they used to
Okay.
be.
Okay, yeah, that's good to know. We can dig into our data a little bit more and go year by year. The concern with the housing is that we have some cost-burdened parts of our community. 54% of our renters in Brainerd, Baxter, the south, southeast, and then townships, and also in the northeast townships are cost-burdened. And 30% of homeowners who actually own their home are cost-burdened, and that means that they're using more than a third of their incomes, right, to provide for housing. Those are high percentages compared to other communities that we are working in.
And how do you come up with that number then? Where does that come from your studies or?
Yes, it's we have the resources that we're using. It looks across like an American Community Survey, the Esri Business Analyst, and what it does, it compiles all that data. And when you're forecasting, it's not a precise science, right, as much as saying the past. So what they're currently saying is as of right now, as of 2023, We are looking at incomes, and we are looking at wages, and we are looking at how much rents cost versus how much homes are costing. And they are cost burdened because they're using more than 33% of their incomes to provide for those mortgages and rents.
And when we're looking at this, we're looking at Crow Wing County specifically, but is that a trend across the whole state of Minnesota, or is it more focused on us? You know, where do we sit in the whole field?
That's my question too.
Yes, so Crow Wing County is much higher than the state.
Okay.
Those percentages are in the 20s versus 54% and 30%.
Okay.
So yeah, that is the one item that we wanted to highlight. So if we can start planning for goals and policies that can somehow, you know, facilitate the kinds of housing that we want to attract or the kinds of developers we want to attract, this is the data that tells us.
It tells you that.
Yeah, that
Okay.
signals correct. So the trends in terms of the future, we will see those households growing, the number of households growing. Even though the number of households are growing, the size of the households is going to drop from 2.3 people per household to 2.2. So we don't know what's happening socially, but those households are, in terms of number of people, are shrinking. The median household incomes are projected to continue to be lower, and as well as the home values are projected to remain lower and not escalate. Even though there is a high demand for housing, and there is a recovering supply of housing, it's not enough, but we are on the positive trajectory. So in terms of issues, it's important to start looking at that aging group. How do we draft policies and goals that can attract the developers who specialize in senior housing or workforce housing? Maybe providing more diverse lodging options is something that we are seeing in the new economy that people want, is they don't all want to stay in a hotel or a motel or a rental long-term home. They're looking for those short-term rentals. They're renting backyards. They're renting pools. They're renting everything that can be rented. If they could subscribe, they would subscribe. So we are just looking at those trends and how do we embrace that growth? Do we capitalize on it, and to what degree? And that's what the goals and policies of this plan will do. When we asked the public to the right, that is the result of that survey question, the public did not feel that there is adequate supply of quality housing and choices for all ages and incomes. So that's something that we can focus on and work on. In terms of land use, we're dealing with a very large territory, like you suggested earlier. And apart from 30 townships and 18 cities, what's interesting is when you look at the land use statistics, more than 50% of the area is forested and 14% is covered by water. And so when we start looking at land use, we start looking at it physically, not just from a demographic standpoint. In terms of issues that we'd want to consider is we know currently you're getting a lot of requests for smaller lots. And so is there something that we can do through the policies and goals and the densities that are set in the comprehensive plan where, we can help fix the code so that you don't get as many requests? Can we provide a more graduated option of lots, and where do we create new districts? Different land uses that can start to anticipate some of these new uses. So when we ask the question to the public, if they think that the county should allow for smaller lots within the county limits, you can see there's some strong opinions all over the board. So,
all the way across the board.
Right, so perhaps we lean into that question and do a little more work around that subject.
Well, and this is, if I can pause on that,
Yes.
This is one of those that it might be interesting to look at the responses and look at the zip codes. Because depending on where depending on where you live, you may have a different opinion, so.
Just a point on that, though. 56401 is a pretty big zip code.
Yes.
So it does take in property north of 210 and a lot of property south of 210. So, and they're two different worlds in a lot of respects, so.
Yep.
So there's a lot of differences. There's a rural lifestyle, there's a more urban, there's different demographics with different needs. But what we did find is that everyone certainly values the natural resources, so that there is some common ground.
Yes.
We may feel differently how to use it, develop it, manage it, preserve it. However, everyone values it at a very high level, and so we will start with that. The ecological districts are exactly that. They're non-jurisdictional, non-political divisions that allow us to talk about the value of the natural resources. And when we do land use, we look at what's left that's buildable. And when we start removing the wetlands, the shorelands, the conservation areas, the easements, parks, right, things that are protected, but also we remove the slopes above 18%. Those are a little harder to develop, a little more costly. So we just removed it for this exercise, which you'll see in the red map. And what's left is 261,000 acres that is considered developable. That's a hard word to say, or buildable. Again, this is just a very broad brush. We didn't do this parcel by parcel. This is a very broad number. And it does not include the city's territories. So this is just unincorporated county and townships. So in terms of trends, we are seeing that people are requesting this experience-based tourism, ecotourism. They like this new thing, which is called the shared economy. And when we ask people about how they feel about the natural resources, you can see that there's an overwhelming majority of people that think we should manage, preserve, we should protect farmland, especially the agricultural aspects, but also enjoy it. People want to be able to enjoy that natural environment. So there is that economic development piece to it. Again, ecotourism, right, is another emerging trend. In terms of issues, I think we've hit upon it, but really balancing development and growth with the impacts of that to the natural environment and trying to maintain its value and trying to maintain its usability and preserving it for future generations. I'm not going to go through all of those, but what we did get from the engagement so far is that people really feel that there's an opportunity to create connections to trails, especially where the roads are being built around schools. And also, there's a huge interest, right, in ATV trails, connecting those further. And picnic facilities are a big thing from what we've heard so far. Again, the engagement's not done, just reporting back to you on the subjects that we're hearing.
Could I just jump back real quick before you get, when you brought on the existing natural resource of recreation, constrained 350 acres, developable 261, do you have anything that says that of that, is that 261 more developable, or is there 261,000 acres total? Some is already developed, some isn't. What is that number? Is it?
Great question. It's total. So we didn't do a parcel by parcel analysis where we removed the existing.
So you don't. So you what is developed
Yes.
and what is developable totals 261.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Would there be a way of saying how much? I mean, without a lot of work, where you could say, of the 261, 100,000 acres are already developed.
We can do that. It's a parcel by parcel analysis, and it is a lot of work, but it doesn't matter. We can do it.
I mean, it was just get us an idea
Yes.
how much more potential we have.
Right. Of vacant land versus, or
Right.
even partially developed lots that have more potential. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Agreed. That's important.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you for the question. So when we look at existing infrastructure, Crow Wing County is at 82% of the pre-pandemic construction activity, which is not concerning. We are on the right trajectory. As of November, we've had over 1,000 permits, and 81% of those permits are in the Shoreland District. Again, there is this relationship between development and growth and the protection of natural resources. So we hear the message loud and clear. When we looked at what the respondents told us about how they feel about the infrastructure, they feel great about the roads. They feel that they have good access to services and healthcare and entertaining. So overall, that was a good response. There are some lower percentages that feel that they don't have access to healthcare, and but overall, in terms of entertainment and the daily services like the groceries, people are pretty content.
Quick question.
Yeah.
When it comes to healthcare, are we talking about access to a facility, or are we talking access to a policy? So a healthcare policy?
I believe, yeah, go ahead, Robin.
The question is about healthcare providers. So that would be clinics, hospitals, medical doctors, medical facilities.
And I will say that in the southern part of the county, there isn't a lot of access, so, and it's a big part of the county, so. I don't know, Commissioner Coring, you were going to say something?
Well, I was just going to say that I guess I'm surprised by that, because if you drive down to Garrison, in my district, there's 2 clinics. You drive to Deerwood, there's a clinic up there. I actually think there's small clinic. Drive to Piers, there's a clinic there. To me, there's access. I guess I'm not sure what the people are talking about there. I mean, there's no clinic in St. Matthias, which I don't think we need one there, but if you look around, the clinics are almost like dollar stores. There seems like there's one on every corner, almost, to me. But.
It's something we can, in our next steps, right, lean into a little bit more, unpackage a little bit, yeah. So I believe we're on trends for infrastructure. So we're seeing this curious attitude that people now believe and feel strongly that broadband is a utility. So it's as important as your sewer and your gas. So it's important to have that coverage, and it enables the innovation piece, because we're seeing that you have a diverse economy, but you also have a culture of startups. And so in order to enable that remote work and that technology piece, the broadband's becoming high need and high opportunity area. Also the Internet of Things, right? Delivery of drones, AI with automated cars. We know that they're not here yet, and it's all being tested. However, it will be here much quicker than we can anticipate and plan for. We are seeing that the spending habits are related to a lot of vacation-oriented activities, so food, entertainment, but also homemaking. So a lot of remodeling, and the spending habits have a preference for buying American, and are based mostly, the decision-making for spending is based mostly on pricing, not on brand loyalty. And that we have 16% of households who are actually interested in helping the environment. So they're looking for eco products or environmentally friendly services, and 10% are willing to spend more in order to get those services. In terms of economic development, we look at resiliency in a way that says, okay, if there were another slowdown, a recession, or a pandemic, hopefully not, but if there were, what would happen to the local economy? With the vacation strength, the vacation portion of your economy so strong, if that slowed down, how many jobs would we lose? You're very diversified, however, we do feel that you can be diversified even further, just because that's what resiliency means, right? Is that you can survive another crisis. So the issues that we're seeing is those seasonal impacts to your infrastructure. Maintenance, planning for those infrastructure pieces are very important. And then for the economic development piece is the balancing the investment in the infrastructure with the growth and aligning that so it's calibrated, not too much of either, so that there's no, there's an efficient government services and aligned with your budgets. We are also looking at balancing conservation and growth, and then looking at how we can diversify further in the economic sector.
I got a question on this. What's the light yellow shaded in the right-hand corner? What's that indicate?
Commissioner, I think that's just a comment or suggestion.
I believe those are the ecological subsections. So like the pastel colors, the yellow, the blue, the pink, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I can see the lakes are blue. But when I'm looking at you go back to the screen that was just up there.
Yeah, I was just going to show you where it comes from.
Oh,
It's a zoomed-in
okay.
version of this. Sorry to make you dizzy. Ecological subsections. What we did,
Oh.
yeah, you are in a very interesting natural resource area, and so we kept that as a background. And we'll explain here in a minute why.
Okay.
So just bear with us. So it actually has to do with the planning approach. Because we want to respect the uniqueness of each township and each city and all of the different areas, we were trying to find an approach to the plan that was not drawn upon political subdivisions, because that would be too easy. And we thought, why don't we find some common ground? And we've heard this very strong message about natural resources, the environment, and growth. And so we thought it would be interesting to see if we could frame the plan as, just to frame it, not that it would be guided that way with every policy and goal, but to frame it around these ecological subsections. And so that's what you see on the input ID map. And that this is where it comes from. It comes from really the DNR way of looking at the natural environment. So that is definitely a question for you to see if this would be a good way to start. We thought that this was a way of bringing those shared commonalities together and those shared values for the county versus starting with a jurisdictional approach, even though we know that the comprehensive plan is for the county.
I think from a staff perspective, I think this makes sense, especially when you start to try to align with our watershed plans that we have, that we're working on right now. We've got 3 watershed plans approved in the county of the Pine River, Mississippi River Brainerd, and then the Mille Lacs down south with the Rum River. We're just finishing up getting started on the Crow Wing River at this point, but this really helps, I think, to tie into those 2 plans together, because you've really, through the One Watershed One Plan program, you've really already made decisions about how you want the natural resources managed in Crow Wing County, and so we don't need to recreate that wheel for this project. So I think we can take this and the One Watershed One Plan and integrate them together, and that would be the natural resource and environment section of the comp plan. And I think, based on what I can tell, not a lot of other counties have had that approach of looking at it from a watershed-based standpoint instead of more, like I said, more of a cookie-cutter approach. I think we can, because things that are happening up in Commissioner Lubke's district are probably different that are happening down in Commissioner Corning's district and likewise. So I think we should look at those and treat them differently just because of the different ecological regions we have and the different watersheds. They're all unique. And you've already done the hard work of approving those and working through those plans already. We don't need to do that all over again.
And it looks like, there's a real high wanting to protect natural resources, want the natural beauty to be protected, and that goes across jurisdictional boundaries. That is a county.
Correct.
What are you going to call it? Mecca.
Yes.
To a certain degree. And that helps kind of tie things, I think, together easier. It would make it easier to tie things, instead of saying, well, we have the big metro area down here, and then we have the rest of the county, and you're kind of separated. No, we look at it as one watershed, one plan.
Yep.
Or as we were talking in the roads, like the roadshed plan, which takes in the whole thing.
Right.
Bring it together. Okay?
And it doesn't mean that we cannot do customized solution for unique areas that have unique needs. So it's just the way of framing the plan. Maybe if we do get into a conflict, maybe we use this as a basis for some guidance. So that was the idea.
Well, I think there'll be focused areas in here that maybe need to be focused on.
Yeah.
But the overall high level is, we're all in this together.
Definitely, yes. And to really start to believe that when one area does well, other areas do well, instead of this separatist approach is really our message. So these are the 10 chapters that we propose. They do not have to be in this order. They do not have to be titled this way. This is just our suggestion. You started to see the county profile, which is really the existing conditions, and land use, transportation, park trails, open space, facilities and infrastructure, housing, water resources, economic development, sustainability, and the most important, implementation, right? Because we don't want this to be this conceptual plan that is just stays up in the air. We want to ground it. We want to figure out priorities. We want to figure out who are the partners, what are the resources, how is this going to get done, so that you can take it as a blueprint and start implementing these things. We did audit your past studies. I just wanted to bring that up because you've done so much work. I think this was the county that had the most studies done that we worked in. So great job, because we are going to use that work, make sure that we don't create conflicts, make sure that we don't duplicate, that we reference that work, and that we reference it where it's appropriate in our work. These are your policies. I will not read that slide to you, but it's just a reminder that you have great policies, that this is an opportunity for us to really start thinking about the future and figuring out how we want to update, change those policies, look at things that are not working. Sometimes that's the easiest way to start. That's why we talk about issues. And then looking at what we want to provide for the community, what are the needs and what are the wants, and maybe separating those out. But this is the plan that will really set the stage for that vision, and then the land use plan may need some modifying in order to execute that vision. And with that, I'll hand it over back to Robin.
So I think, I'll go back to the slide, but one of the first, we thought we'd just have more of a discussion, and these were just some questions to maybe get us started, but also just looking if there was anything based on either our presentation or even the tour yesterday that we wanted to talk a little bit more on. So these are going to be the discussion. I guess first of all was just going to be, you know, do these still resonate? Are they? I think when we talked, you know, last, you know, do we keep them? Do we? I think when we met at the workshop a few months ago, I think everyone thought that they were still relevant, but we're not going to throw them out. But you know, how much additional work do they need, or you know, changes? So I guess that was going to be a first question, and then I guess it was, what was the next one? Oops. What about the policies that are missing? So these, you know, there's ones about facilities and infrastructure, water resources, and sustainability that you currently don't have in the current plan. So, you know, where would we like to start with those, and do you have suggestions? So I can go back. Sorry, I keep going back and forth, but
And issues, right?
Yes,
We're
and
here to
issues.
confirm that we're getting public engagement. We're trying to extract those themes and issues so we can solve for those issues. But really here to confirm that what we've discussed today, are we on the right track? Are these issues that we've identified, do they resonate with what you're seeing and what your constituents are telling you?
and I think maybe just for I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Well, I guess I just gotta, I put a lot of weight into my township officials, because the township government is the grassroots of all government. To me, that's where everything starts. People go to their township meeting, they have the right to set their levy there at the meeting. And I would be willing to bet that a majority of my township supervisors or boards, they want, at least in my area, they want to try to preserve large tracts of land where, you know, it might be 10 acres and up to build a house, or 15 acres and up. So what's going to happen? I know there's a push, and Chris and I have had this conversation about smaller tracts. We just did a division for Warren Morgan because his granddaughter wanted to give her, I don't know if it was 2.5 or 5 acres. And I know that's coming down the line, but how are we going to, how am I going to respond to township officials when they push back if we're saying, now we're going to lower what your building envelope will be is from 15 down to 5. Is that how it's going to work?
I'd
I
be
don't know
happy
if I
to
explained
take us through
that
that.
properly.
So, Commissioner Coring, I think that's a great question, and I think that's one of the probably the more challenging aspects of this plan to wrestle with, is that I think from a perspective of when you're looking at infrastructure and with these townships, what we want to do is we want to direct the development to that current existing infrastructure already, to existing roadways, you know, to the county roads that are existing, and, you know, some of the more maybe more high-used township roads, more maintained, well-maintained roads. And so I think those are the lots those are the areas of the county I think we want to pursue, the smaller lot size and encourage folks to develop there. But then, identify those areas in the townships that, they're more rural. The roads aren't as, aren't the more busier type roads and that. And so those are the lots we want to probably encourage the larger lots to be, in those areas. So I think we just have to be more, use more of a scalpel technique, really be in there and be more specific. And instead of, I think our current land use map might be more general in some areas than it should be. And so I think we just have to wrestle with where, if talking to these townships, development, is coming, where do we want it to occur versus where do we not want it to occur, I think is the big question.
Chris, the question is there's two different apples. We'll have the comprehensive plan, which we can look at, but the zoning map is a whole different apple. Am I right? I mean, we're not going to go into the comprehensive plan and say, well, in St. Matthias Township, now we're going to go from 15 acres down to 5. That's not going to happen in the comprehensive plan. Am I right? That'll happen if we change the zoning.
Right. Yeah. So one of the one of the deliverables that will come from the planning process will be putting together a future land use map for what the future growth would look like in up to 2040. And so so that is one of the deliverables. It doesn't mean that's going to be the map that gets implemented, but that will be a future land use map that we expect could be implemented to address some of these types of issues and have that conversation during the planning process.
I understand. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Paul brought up a really good point, or Commissioner Coring brought up a really good point. Who determines where that should be? Should it be the landowner determining what he wants to do with his land, if he wants to take it like you said, Warren would like to take it down to a smaller lot for family, or is it the township saying, no, we don't want that to happen?
Well, at the end of the day, it's the county's regulatory authority to make those decisions based on recommendations that the township provides and feedback that they give. And then we always, you always have the landowner's desire as to what they would like. And so there's a little bit of wrestling with that and what is the answer. I think what we're proposing today is more of the concept of this is an opportunity to drive development where we think it's appropriate. And so you have that on the map, and then when you put it on the map, and then somebody can come in and say, well, I know you look at it from a pretty broad stroke, but you didn't really look that close at my property, and I think mine, I'd like to do something different on mine. That's when it comes in and goes to the planning commission. We have a public hearing, neighbors are involved, comes back to you guys for final decision on those applications. So it is a broad brush, but we're just because I mean, at the end of the day, if the decision is, well, I own my land and I can do what I want, well, then I don't have a job anymore, and we don't have a regulatory scheme, and because then they can build their house 5 feet from the, I mean, so I was talking to some folks the other day about it, and they said, well, we got to make sure. They said, we regulate people currently, and that's not going to change. The question is, to what scope do we regulate, and to what scope do we have influence in the county as far as, we see it today. We saw it, 2003 to 2023 was, and so did that comp plan, does 23 look better than 2003? Mm-hmm. That's a question to ask. And then the question is now in 2040, what do we want the county to look like as far as, our future growth? That's what we're trying to address now. And, I think, we all kind of shake the crystal ball and we try to take our look looking to the future as best as we can, but we're not going to be that specific to every single parcel that, we're going to know just exactly how every parcel should be developed. And that's where the opportunity comes for the individual, folks to interact with the ordinance and come in and make applications. And if they think things are, zoned wrong on their property, come back in and have a discussion, and we can see if there's a better discussion for that. But I think we need to start with a bigger approach, that bigger broad brush to say, generally speaking, this is where we want to see things to occur within our townships, and where we, a lot of discussions in life is not about what we want, but what we don't want sometimes, and that too. So it's just the, it's the same coin, just the two sides of it, I guess. So
A crystal ball or a snow globe? See where the snow falls?
A little of both, I think, so.
With a little bit of data.
A little bit of data mixed in to give us influence.
And people's opinion and your opinions as leaders. It's really important to do this exercise, otherwise things wouldn't change. We would just need a land use current zoning map, and that's it. But how do we start preparing thinking beyond this moment? It's hard because it requires change. But this is the vision that sets everything else, the policies and the goals. So, and I wanted to bring up the discussion about infrastructure is super important. We call that concurrency in planning, and there's different degrees of concurrency. Some jurisdictions put in the roads and the infrastructure, some others are like, no, the developer pays for that. So there's degrees, and the degrees are set by your policies and your goals and where you want to be as a county.
And I think the important thing to remember too is that as we look at the different applications coming to the, to the department, and then depending on who has the authority to approve, but come in for a plat, for a conditional use permit, for a variance, any of those permits, one of the questions we ask as part of the fact-finding process, is this in harmony with the county's comprehensive plan? So we have to think about that component too of, that has a big driving piece as far as, what people can and can't do in their properties. So the comp plan, it's important for that aspect to think of it too from that perspective.
Yeah, that's a good point, because at that point, when that finding may seem very conceptual and aspirational, but if somebody's coming in with an industrial use next to a residential, and the future land use map currently shows it as becoming industrial, probably not, then they have a basis to be able to move that way. And so that's when you truly use that future land use map beyond your current zoning map.
I think that's probably about, do we have any other slides that we have left? Or we have at the end, I don't remember.
Just go back to that. We do not have any policies listing, you said missing, for facilities, infrastructure, water resources, sustainability. You're saying that should be part of our plan?
We currently don't have them as chapters in the current comp plan that you currently have adopted. We would like to.
Yeah, they're mixed in there.
Yeah.
They're just spread
They're
out.
mixed in there, separate them and
Yeah.
more, be concise with those separated.
And more powerful and to the point, more usable, right? It's an important piece. We've
Yeah,
obviously done the work, and we know that you have all these documents. So, and also sustainability. Sustainability can mean a lot of things. It can mean resilience. It can mean renewable energy. It can mean all sorts of things. So just really defining what that means for us, and what are we allowing, what do we want to not allow, to what degree.
Let's see, so go back. So yeah, there weren't any current policies related to facilities and infrastructure, water resources, and sustainability.
Yeah.
So, like, for example, yesterday when we toured the landfill, like, that would fall under a facility. And so,
Correct.
What might we want for policies, goals, visions, we talked about longevity and recycling and, reuse and.
The solid waste management program for the county. Yep.
Yeah, so what might be some direction for us to, to start working on some of these chapters, especially, for those other ones, we have something to start with if the county feels that those are appropriate and good to start with, but then we need a little more direction on some of these, so.
So I guess the question I have for the board would be, I would like to propose an idea that we have more of a workshop with the board we'd like to get, maybe go down and, be over in our meeting rooms downstairs in Land Services and get maps on tables and have a more conversation versus, this type of approach, and where we can really get some of that feedback, because then we would take all that information and circle back probably in January and say, here's the issues that we hear, and this is how the chapter would give you the layout of how we think the chapters lay out, what are going to be the issues in there. And if you guys say we think that's a good place to start, then the plan will begin to start that drafting. But I just don't want to get out in front of you. I want to make sure that we're tracking with you guys, so that when you get the plan, and the goal is, you got the chapter 1, Tim sent it to you last week, is to take a look at that and give us some. That's just a draft. So if there's feedback, questions, concerns, feel free to send them my way, and I'll work with Moira and Robin on getting some of those resolved, because the idea would be that you would be looking at this as it's being developed, so that when we get to the end, it's not like you're getting a big, huge document, read it, you have read it over time, and then you'd be more familiar with it to give us feedback as it goes. So by the time we get to the end, it should look pretty good by the time we go with the finished product.
I just
But-
put up the, kind of the next, these are
Yeah.
the next three.
Exactly.
So, yeah, and so there's some, I think we have a really pretty clear, direction for like the natural resources one, and we, can start working on some of those. But then I like the idea of having some maps, and we can show maybe how some of those layers, like you layer the ecological systems with the watersheds, and then maybe, where the road infrastructure is, and then you can say, okay, here's an area that maybe should be preserved at, 1 in 40 because there's not the infrastructure, there's,
Yeah.
it's good ag land, so.
Where on your calendar would you see this, the
Workshop?
board coming in? Yeah, I don't,
Maybe a workshop? Is that what you're?
Yeah, my goal would be in December. We'd have that next month. Yeah, we just try to find some time, work with Tim and Teresa on, finding time in your schedule to make it work, and, but it'd be great to get that done. Then I think we'd also do the same thing with the Planning Commission, the Board of Adjustment, have a workshop with them to kind of get some of their feedback, and then we could bring that kind of back together to you guys and give us, say, this is what we heard, did we hear you right, and this is kind of our marching orders going forward.
So have we heard enough, though, from the townships or the cities? Because I know at our open house, we haven't heard anything from those people, and, they do, I mean, to get all of us in the whole room together, I think I know somebody would take out a roll of duct tape for me.
We have sent notices to the cities and
I
asked
know.
them for feedback, and we haven't
You get
received
zero.
much. We've done to the townships, so I mean, at some point, I don't know what else we can do to get them to engage more, and so I really,
Invite them,
And-
but
and-
we
and
can't
I-
force them.
so we've asked, we've given up, we've had meetings and that, and we still, I'm just not getting
is-
anything back.
It is unfortunately par for the course.
It is.
It is,
That's
I know,
That's kind of my
and-
point, is that's
This
not
is not
unusual.
unusual. It is the case everywhere. I think Chris is exactly right. Until I see how it impacts my ability to do what I want to do,
Yes.
It's not a
it's
problem.
very esoteric to people.
It is,
And so I think we're not going to be successful
I
as
know,
much as
I
we
know.
have tried.
But I
That's
think-
the only feedback I have for you on the plan, because I think you're on the right track,
Yeah.
is the demographic section. And my comment is, I know that what you're doing is the current state of the art of the craft. You're telling me what is. That is less interesting to me. The population, the share of the population that is over 65 as a snapshot in time is interesting, but it is not nearly as interesting to me as how that has changed over time.
Okay.
Because this whole thing is about managing change. And the best predictor of the future we have to use is our past. And so, what's the trending on our population over 65? I use that example because it's the easy one. We know it's going up. We also know it's going to go down as baby boomers die, because it's a big generational cohort that is impacting our demographics. So housing stock, do we have more or less? It's not important to me to tell me what it is today, snapshot. What's important to me is tell me how it's changing over time, and that guides the decision about how to manage growth in the future. That's missing from the state of the art of the craft. I'm not criticizing you guys specifically, I'm criticizing the entire planning industry who does it this way. I'd like to see that changed.
Yes, fair point, and we can also give you where the aggregation of data occurred, because it's not just, when we did the demographic, it's not just 2023, it's what led up to it and how far back does the data,
I want to see the graph,
yes, we will show you the graph.
because the graph shows me the trend line.
Yes.
And the trend line is what
Yes.
I'm most interested in.
Right.
Very good.
And I would like to see us just take a really hard look at unorganized. I mean, that's growing,
Yep.
in my opinion, the fastest of any area. And I want to have a plan rather than, I don't want to react. I want to have a plan.
Yeah, it's the highest township for permits. I mean, we see most permits come from first, when you look at, the other townships, it's high.
And
numbers
what
there.
would the solution be for that down the road? Because it's becoming its own entity without a lot of internal governance. You know, it doesn't have a township where you got hands-on as much. It comes up here to a county board that is pretty much, doesn't really fit what we do as county board.
Right, well, one of the outcomes of this planning process could be, a goal could be to provide more information to the citizens that live in the first assessment, of which I'm one, and to encourage them to incorporate, to become a township, organize, not incorporate, but to organize.
I've tried.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
well,
but it could be a goal, but I just don't think it'll happen.
I don't think
because
it'll
everybody,
happen.
Thank you, Mayor.
everybody loves unorganized.
What I do think is that what we want is good, high-quality, orderly development.
Right.
And so we don't want dirt paths
Right.
for roads into developments. We want nice, township-quality tarred roads. That's going to impact the quality of the house you build, because it'll impact the price of the lot. And so that's the focus, I would say, in the first assessment district. We want high-quality, orderly development.
Yep.
You know what that means.
I do. Yep. And I think the roads that we already got help, so.
I think you have to be in close contact with our county engineer, because I want roads that connect from one development to another. I
Right.
just don't want a bunch of cul-de-sacs, so you're stuck back in the woods someplace, and you want to be here, but the road doesn't go through, and it's, 100 feet from where you want to be, and you have to go 2 miles around.
And I think there's going to be that push-pull a little bit, because we found out just a couple weeks ago that some folks didn't want more development taking their road back,
Yeah.
and so how does that work? So I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces.
This
into
is why
that.
land use planning is the only sport in which the referee gets punched. We get sued for the decision you make, and what we are trying to do is balance competing property rights. The right for me to do what I wish with my property, balanced against my neighbor's right to the quiet enjoyment of theirs. It's that simple. So in ag districts, Paul, that it's farmers who, on the one hand, if you're actively farming, still want large parcel sizes and want the government to prevent another farmer from creating small parcel sizes that they're going to spread manure right next to. Even if it's your
Exactly.
daughter that comes to the first time that house is split, your daughter will eventually pass away and sell to someone else who isn't connected to the farmstead. And so on the one hand, you got farmers who want the government to let them do what they want with their property, to split it when you want. And on the other hand, if they're actively farming, want the government to tell their neighbor that they can't. This is land use planning. It's the only sport in which the referee gets punched. And
Yep,
we're always going to have the tug and pull of competing property rights. That's what it's all about.
And we have a great farmer community in Crow Wing. And
Yes.
I've always said that our farmer community wants big lots until they don't want a big lot.
Until they don't.
And so then how do you balance that out? I
So-
think that's the question.
So maybe flexibility is your answer, because we want different things at different points in our lives. They change, but we can't keep changing the code fast enough. So maybe a layered approach that provides flexibility and options, right? And then the big grounding discussion to what we want is budgets, right? We want asphalt roads, we want, but at the end of the day, it's not going to happen unless we have the budgets to build it. So that is the concurrency discussion that needs to occur in proportion to growth, wants, and needs. But at the end of the day, the engineers and the public works tell us how it's done, but you set the budgets, and the budgets set the level of service for those things. So, we may have roads that are not on gravel, but what's the level of service? Is it level of service A for everything? What is the rating of that road? And so budgets are the grounding force. And a lot of people are taking their budgets and reverse engineering planning. They're starting with that and then saying, what can we afford from a land use standpoint, which is, another approach. But then the engineers would be in charge, so I'm a little worried, but.
Planners and engineers. Madam Chair, that is what we have for you today, I believe, correct?
Yes,
Thank
correct.
you for your time and
Are
your
there
thoughts.
questions for these folks?
Any questions from the audience? Okay.
Is there any?
Just
You're on
thanks,
the right track.
thanks for the engagement. We just appreciate the feedback and attending
You're on the right
a road tour all day. That was probably the most exciting thing you could have done with your day, but you chose to do that. So we appreciate that from a staff perspective, so thank you.
I heard good things about it.
Thank you.
So.
Thank you all.
Very much. Have a good Thanksgiving.
Madam Chair, that is all we have for you today, unless you have any questions for me.
No? Anybody? No. We are adjourned.
Very good, thank you.